They've been friends going on 20 years and now stepping into one of the most dangerous behaviors of a lifetime, having an opinion and openly talking about it on the internet. It's Pinche and The Gringo.
And we're back.
How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty
How's
good.
your week?
Uh, it's been the same.
The
It's been the
same?
same.
The
Yeah,
same.
it's the same stuff happens over and over again. It's work, work, and more work. It's the
You gonna start
grind.
driving around with Poxitani Phil and stuff?
It's
just Groundhog
Groundhog
Day.
Day.
It's Coronavirus Day 512. Yeah,
I've been,
things.
I've actually gone to a couple of restaurants and ate there. They're keeping it. I mean, even in like the hole in a wall Mexican restaurant that I go to every once in a while, they're
Yep.
keeping it to like 25%. Oh, I think now they can open to 50%. I think Friday.
What day was that? I believe it is Friday. Well, I think you and I went to breakfast at one joint that you liked pretty well. Is that the one you're referring to? The Laborish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
pretty nice
Yeah.
little place.
They're doing really well there. I mean, they were doing really well just with takeout. So
That's good. It's good to see them still going because there are so many small businesses that are hurting on this. And our dojo actually opened back up, and they're running a smaller set of classes, uh, and trying to get everybody just moving again, right? Not trying to go right back into classes. But for me, I don't want to go back into. I'm just not there yet. I don't want to do that yet.
yeah.
And it's so for me though. But they do have Zoom classes, and they just put the camera in the camera. You can see everything going on, and then just work along through it. And basically, you follow along on your own. And they're still focused on the class stuff. And I'm like, and we've talked just general questions back and forth. But I've just said, it's like, don't worry about me. I'll do my own stuff. Take care of the folks you have there. So.
But we
Certainly
have
want to be back in the dojo at some point.
exactly. But we have some stuff to talk about today. We're talking about Trump and the hydroxychloroquine.
It amazes me that you can say that word every time so easily. I say it differently every time. I can't get that thing out. It's
I've been
hydraulic.
practicing that for like a week, and his testing statement.
And its testing statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still a
So
little bit mind-blowing.
yeah, we'll talk about that later. But we're also talking about contact tracing by apps and people. We're also talking about boycotting FedEx.
Yeah, potentially get to that topic. And then we had a few others in there that we had still added on.
Oh, the Lori Loughlin story and the Michigan protest.
Yeah, in our Michigan protest. That was what we were looking for
Mm-hmm.
to this one. What to see, because there was a whole nother spin to that and another protest that occurred in Michigan.
What? Yeah, I heard about the other one, but what was it for?
Well, it was kind of the same thing of opening essential businesses, but they did it as like a haircut. People
That's
were giving
right.
haircuts on it, and that's about the extent of what I have. I have like a surface level knowledge of what happened there, but there were definite points of interest from symbols and things that were carried at the event that raised eyebrows and questioned some things for sure. But let's drop back into President Trump's statement that he was taking hydroxychloroquine, and then them basically coming back with warning it again.
So he's been talking about hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah,
See, I
got
have
it
many
right,
issues
messed
with
you
it.
up.
For a while now, he's saying that, oh, he was saying like 3 weeks ago that, yeah, this was the drug, this is going to help us. It's a drug for malaria, is what
Right.
they've used it for.
Right, it's what it's been used for in the past.
And they say, oh, yeah, studies are shown that it's going to do very well with COVID-19. And apparently now Trump is taking that. So his doctor, his physician, has prescribed him hydroxychloroquine as a preventative measure so he doesn't get COVID-19.
what was it? Chief? No, that's not. I was trying to find his doctor. Who is who is the actual president doctor at this point?
I don't know who the physician is.
Because that was the question I had. Is so he's taking it. I mean, granted,
Right.
Person can take whatever they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at a POTUS level, somebody knows something and would definitely advise, hey, that's probably not a good idea, or that's probably fine, whatever, right? Somebody's bound to be doing an advisory thing in that aspect, right? So if we look at that, that would definitely be the presidential doc. But is it at his suggestion, or is it at POTUS's?
He's been pushing this drug for some reason for a long time without any backing on to why. Just because it worked on malaria doesn't make it work on COVID-19. That we don't know what works for it. Could have done it, but it's already been proven that not only does it not work to help with COVID-19, it actually makes it worse if you take it and you have COVID-19.
Yeah, it's supposed to cause even more problems. It's like it depends on where it's caught. The doctor who agreed, former White House physician on President Trump's decision today. There's a few folks out there. I'm trying to find
could
why.
It have done it?
Because I mean, if that's where we're at, there was also the other aspect. Did you hear the statements around ibuprofen?
Mm-hmm.
Based on French research, and this is kind of old. This would take us back to March, but it was French research that said ibuprofen could be detrimental in the attempting to combat a potential case of COVID-19.
Ibuprofen is bad in and of itself if you take a lot of it anyway. But even just taking like a regular amount over time, like every day, it's bad for you.
Yeah, then I'm done. No.
It like does stuff to your reproductive stuff for men.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Had no idea.
Yes.
So it's not good for the yang.
No.
I'm going to have to Google this now, which makes me concerned, considering the feds can now warrantlessly read my history. They'd be like, why are you looking up ibuprofen? And, I'm going to have to look at some fed and be like, well, hey.
I'm trying to inject it in there.
Oh. Ouch. French health official said ibuprofen may aggravate. Coming off of womenshealth.com. May aggravate COVID-19, but other experts raise questions. So it's pretty. How old is the story? This is one of those things that blows out a massive amount of clicks and then just quietly goes away. And I think
something is something to do with that, because ibuprofen kind of cuts inflammation, and maybe your body needs to go through that inflammation phase to be able to cure the virus. So I don't know. Maybe it's something like in that respect.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is if we look at what it's doing, is it suppressing any natural antibody that we have. I don't have an ibuprofen knowledge. My experience with ibuprofen is I got pain, I take ibuprofen. That's it. That is truly my 100% medical experience. But I do remember there being the potential for too much of it to be a bad thing.
Yeah.
And in that aspect, I have Tylenol. So I'm between the two.
Yeah, that's another one that you can change it up with, or you can use aspirin. That'll work too.
The dumbest thing is what actually got me beyond most daily aches and pains. Massive amounts of water.
Yeah.
For my surgeries and back problems and knee problems and all that, massive amounts of water. What was it actually turned out being the other way, but there was a story where a lady said she tried, based on Trump's statement, taking hydrochloroquine, and it killed her husband and made her sick. And then it ended up being that she just poisoned her husband.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was where that story went. And it's like, okay. But it was and then that's where it got quiet again, right? We didn't hear hydrochloroquine.
How to get rid of your spouse.
Or a specific tab open on her browser. But in that aspect, that's when it got quiet. They didn't talk about hydrochloroquine anymore. You heard little inklings of it, and then he says he's actually taking it, which at that point, we got into what's the financial benefit for POTUS in that. So people got suspicious, right? But
I was already suspicious because he was pushing. And I was like, why are you pushing this without knowing anything about it? I was like, it works for malaria. Yeah, that's fine. Great. Awesome. Malaria is not the coronavirus.
No, definitely not. And that's, so it comes
out. Or at
out,
least it's not COVID-19.
No, that's true. I mean, it comes out that his financial stake is actually very minor, at least on paper, through some specific fund. So if we take out the financial gain from it, the potential thought of the financial gain, and this is his statements in past have proved to be detrimental and inflammatory or raise an issue. It's very much the stuff we see on YouTube to tie the stuff in. Somebody says, hey, this person is bad. Don't go and harass this person, though. They bad. And then what does their audience do? They go and harass the person. So in that same aspect, we have Trump makes a statement about hydrochloroquine. People go and grab it. Lady, according to the story, I'll find it if we need to drop it in the show notes or the comments, we run into a death with hydrochloroquine, but then people started hoarding it.
Yeah. There's
been stories of hoarding hydrochloroquine already. And he's done it with stocks. He says something about a specific stock or a specific company, and in that statement, then their stock drops, tanks in a way, affecting the market.
But there was other statements that he made as well, like his testing statement.
Yeah.
So
do you have it
here's
there?
the thing. He goes through and he says, well, of course, the only reason that we're reporting more cases is because we're doing more testing.
Yeah, I have the quote. I think. Yeah, here we go. So don't forget, we have more cases than anybody in the world. But why? Because we do more testing. When you test, you have a case. When you test, you find something is wrong with people. If we didn't do any testing, we would have very few cases. They, bracketing the media, don't want to write that.
Well, here's one thing about it, is that the majority of these, a lot of these cases, they're false negatives. They're getting a negative because they're either they're not doing it right, which if you've ever gotten a swab, you'll know it because they stick it way up in your nose and like kind of massage your brain almost.
Yeah, I've never had anything like that have to be done.
So I actually thought it's a painful thing.
I thought it was actually straight back into where the sinus cavity connects into the throat. They're getting way up in here.
Yeah, well, they're getting from like way back in there. It's going into the sinuses. But they're doing it up through your nose.
I really thought that statement, when made, was taken out of context. That's what I thought. I'm like, no way, that's serious. That's definitely mixed up wording. Now, if I'm missing more context here, hopefully somebody in chat can kind of bring it a little bit further. But that statement is like saying you catch more fish if you keep throwing the hook in the lake. Well, surprise,
Well, no
surprise, surprise.
kidding.
Yeah, it's like,
No
so,
kidding.
and that's where it's like, I want that. To be honest, I wanted that to be out of context. Just like,
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
let that be out of context.
And then when you saw it, I was like, did he really just say that?
And I mean, and this is where it'll get me in trouble with some and fine with others. He does a lot of his live stuff off the cuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not teleprompted, not preset, not recorded. At least that's how it feels. Or good chunks of it are pre-done, and then he ad-libs.
But here's the thing. That's why the people that voted for him love him.
Because he's as raw, or?
Because he's raw. But that doesn't mean that he's giving correct information.
Right. Well,
that's not accurate.
What was there was actually an indicator recently that somebody reached out to the CEO of Twitter to find out what they could do to get him banned.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I need to look into the story, but I might bring it back. Which,
I mean, but then that goes, I don't know. I don't agree with that, because that's
go ahead. Sorry.
That's going against your freedom of speech.
But you don't have freedom of speech on Twitter. You don't have freedom of speech on YouTube either, and you don't have freedom of speech on Facebook, or TikTok, or Instagram. Freedom of speech does not exist in any of those areas.
Well,
they have the power to
delete. You do have the freedom of speech, but they can delete it. But you still have the right to be able to post it.
Right, but by it being deleted, that's silencing.
Mm-hmm.
So your freedom of speech is being stripped away. And when you look at it through these publishers, it looks shady to them working a narrative. But with his stuff, he is POTUS, right? Right. He is the president. He makes a public statement and then deletes it and changes the tweet.
Mm-hmm.
The original tweet, he is POTUS. Because of his position, the statements he makes on a public level need to be maintained as records.
Right.
So just as we don't have an edit button in our tweets, his account shouldn't have a delete button.
Right.
And it's not to get him in gotchas or any of that. I'm sure that may or may not happen. But the point is, his position, because even I don't recall Obama and Twitter.
He was on Twitter, but it was a president account. It was a government account.
It was a social media controlled account, right? And this is like him with a BlackBerry in the White House just going, okay.
Let me see what I like to say. Okay.
Yeah. And that's where that the record shouldn't be able to be deleted. Because all of that stuff, because of what he's saying and the fact that he's a public servant, when you're making a public statement like that public statement, if it causes detriment to the people that you're serving at that point, you could be violating an oath of office, commitment as a public servant. And if he deletes it, we have Internet Archive, right? No matter what, something can be pulled back up, whatever's been said. Mm-hmm. But that's where these records come to be for both reasons. No, I didn't say that. No, he didn't say that. And yeah, you did say that. So it's a two-way street. It's for the purpose of proof, but it's also for the purpose of proof, regardless of the side of the argument or where it's being utilized. But that kind of statement, stuff like that, I would love to give benefit of the doubt, say that he's trying to go off the cuff, but I can't. Unfortunately, I can't even give it to him in that, because even a slight mixing of words doesn't go that far. I mean, everybody's favorite gaffe with Junior is his "fool me once, can't fool me again," whatever. However that quote came out, right? But that's a very simple sentence, and he's like, "This will fit right here. It's ad-libbed. It's perfect." He's trying to say it, and you trip over those words. Mm-hmm. That's a whole hell of a lot of tripping, from my opinion. Just from the view of how it's said, that's a lot of tripping up over words. So it's not something.
But if you look at it, because we're both educated, we both kind of understand. We both kind of understand like what life's about, and what he meant by what he said. But saying it the way he said, do you think some people can think, well, yeah, you're right. The more people you test, the more positives you're going to get. Of course, yeah, you're right, Trump.
We got to work on our aluminum hats that we can put on at different tinfoil hats at different points, because the other path that you can travel as a conspiracy theorist on this is an effort from him directly to influence people to not trust the validity of the testing. Mm-hmm. As such, reducing the number of people willing to do testing.
Yeah.
But the other aspect to testing is, when should you be getting tested? There's not any real thing. I mean, I'm not going to go rush out and sit in a line full of people who are going, I might be sick. Mm-hmm. Let me see if I am too. No, I'm not going to sit in the line for that.
Well, here's one thing. We're pretty sure that my mother-in-law might have had it. She even went to go get a test, and she told us, yeah, that when they went to go do the swab, she's had swabs done before. This one didn't hurt. Swabs are supposed to hurt when you take them, when they take them of you, because they got to get over there and like swab your innards to test for it.
Yeah, it goes.
So it came back negative.
Let's see if I can find the diagram.
But her doctor told her, just stay in, just quarantine yourself. I don't want to put you in a hospital right now. So, and she's an older lady. She's in her 70s. So,
yeah, the image I'm seeing is they're actually going in, and it's straight back through the nasal cavity, touching to the highest points of the throat. Mm-hmm. Either way, something that looks absolutely not anything I want to have to go through. And for those who have, man, hope you're feeling better, and it was a good result, because that's just, oof.
I mean, either way, you still need to go up. You still need to go up through the nose, depending on how long your nose is, unless it's like.
Yeah, it's oof. It don't look pretty,
man.
It's
still up and over, so I'm like, no, that's not really anything I want to do.
It's one of those pictures that makes whatever the picture is representing on your own body revulse in some way, or just kind of agitate itself. It's like.
So let me the more testing you do, the more positive you're gonna find. That doesn't mean that those positives aren't there.
No, exactly not. That's where, so to lean into that, to the testing, right, is if there's just so many like we said, we could play all the conspiracy theory thinking we want, but trust in medical science and trust in that testing is obviously important, right?
Yeah.
Without it, it doesn't work too well. And I guess, which actually kind of leads us into our next one, where we're talking about contact tracing.
That was a great segue right there.
Hey, it's not too bad, right? We might work on this stuff. We might.
Yeah.
Not a bad run. So let me grab, because there was a basically an online class to try and get anywhere from 6,400 to 17,000 contact tracers for New York. Mm-hmm. And it's free. It's
so tell us what a contact tracer is.
Well, I'm going to say it at the level I have, but I've also got to find it here in the story. Okay. And essentially, here we are. We'll take this quote, and the quote's coming off of ABC News from a reporter who supposedly took the course. But put simply, contact tracers' job is to support people who've tested positive for COVID-19 and identify anyone else they come into contact with, and potentially those people being exposed to the disease. That contact tracer reaches out to individuals who have been exposed and then advises them to quarantine for 14 days. So in that, they ran this big free online class to get as many people signed up for it as possible. Mm-hmm. But what are the results of this stuff? You have somebody who is going to have to go to someone's home or call by phone, which they actually note in here between Massachusetts, Michigan health officials, is the fact that the contact tracing system itself is very difficult to even make function because you're relying on phones, right? You're calling people to say, hey, you were at the movies when Jim was at the movies and Jim's got COVID, so it's possible you two quarantine for 14 days. My phone rings and it's a number. That's auto ignore. I'm not answering that call, which I bet you is a very large percentage of Americans.
What do they send you a text though?
Then I'm looking at it as a scam.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's still the same thing to me. You're an untrusted, unknown contact. You're a scam or a robocall, or it essentially. And this is, I didn't think about this, and we conversed about it a little bit before.
But is it a scam if they don't give you a link to click on?
If it's just text, it's still scam. If it's
just text,
still scam. I'm still going to view it as a scam, and not respond to it. That's personal. And so let's look at what is that a result of, right? We spent our youth with our parents telling us, somebody answer that phone. We pick up the phone. It's like, hi, this is so-and-so from a Publishers Clearinghouse, and I'd like to speak to your dad. Is your dad there? And we're like, oh, we know this stuff. Click. We do the job. Yeah. Mom and dad said hang up on those people. So we hang up on them. And then we get into cell phones, and then our cell phones get on that list. And then we have the caped crusader himself, the government, step in and say, if you get on this do not call list, you won't get any more robocalls. Yeah, that happened. Really, it did. I mean, I don't get any more robocalls. I don't get any less either. So in their own failures and the telecoms who make bucks on it, so they don't care. And they're both of their inability to control that situation, which could lead to other aspects. But at bare minimal, let's say that their inability to control that situation and stop the robocalls is something that feeds to being detrimental to people being willing to just answer a phone anymore.
Right. For
somebody they don't know, which yields to poor survey and test results, which we know from I think it was a study that I was learning a little bit about kinesiology while I was building a course. And that was one of the things they talked about is in the validity of the testing of trying to determine the volume of illness within a specific population or city or group, and getting members of that group to respond to those surveys or to be truthful in those surveys, because they can be kind of invasive in some cases. So even with a contact person, there's already a lot of established mistrust.
Right.
I mean, what do you think? How would you respond to that text? Would you look at that text in the same way? How would you see that text? It comes up, phone rings, and you're like, I don't know that number. It's 492 area code, wherever 492 is. If you're in 492, hi to the homies.
Yeah, no, I don't answer it.
You wouldn't answer it, right? So then you get a no link text message stating, this is whoever it wants to be from. Who would that be coming from? We don't have the national health system, which is UK's NHS, which might give it to which would make a very valid way of improving one of your phishing emails.
But I think we also have to figure out how that would come through. Do you get a call that automatically it's like from the Center for Disease Control that's coming towards you or whatever? Oh, read it. Oh, that's kind of cool. If it comes to you on the phone, well, maybe I'll answer it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I like to mess with scammers anyway and waste their time. But no, if it came through as a text, I'll maybe look at it and maybe do some research on it.
Get more validity around it. So So for me in that same text, so let's say it comes in and we've had, I don't watch the news. I get my news manually. I source out what I want to read, and I do watch different shows and things online, but I don't watch actual media news.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say it's broadcast, right? We do have those means. We have the emergency broadcast system, which is thankfully never been used recently, except in Hawaii when some guy pressed the wrong, that's a missile button. But if that type of communication had gone out to expect that this call was coming, to get into that system, and it starts to provide that validity, I still wouldn't do it. Because it'd be like, it's easy enough to spoof that number.
But you wouldn't do what? And they're saying you
wouldn't
probably should
respond to the
quarantine
text.
yourself.
Oh, if the text is coming to me and they're like, oh, you should probably quarantine yourself. Well, that's easy enough. I'm already not doing anything.
Mm.
But there's still, I would need enough information to really convince me that it's valid. And then if it is, I'd act on it. Because there's nothing currently that restricts me, right?
Right.
I'm one of those in a benefited position just through where I just happen to be at this time in life, that I don't have to be in an office. I don't have to go and work a storefront. I don't have, I'm not behind a counter working face to face with people all day. I'm not an essential worker if you think about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like, okay, you got to quarantine for 2 weeks. I believe what you're telling me here. There's enough information somehow provided that, yeah, I was actually at that place on that day, checks my bank statements. Yeah, about that time too, because I made a purchase at the place as well. There's the possibility it exists. So I need to quarantine for 14 days. Okay, fine. I'm already doing that anyway, so it doesn't affect me. But what about those it does? You need to quarantine for 14 days. Oh, I need to go to work tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been in that position at earlier parts in our lives where if we missed a day of work, it might as well be I'm not paying the rent in some instances.
Yeah. When we used to live paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, we don't do that anymore.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. That stuff can always change, and hopefully it doesn't. We can keep progressing and maybe be able to. But that leads us to the other conversation we've had, and it's not on our topic. Is we've talked about living wage things.
Oh yeah.
Accurate pay, and stuff to that effect. So those are the conversation we should definitely have, because I think that perspective has changed for me over time. I won't say whether it's one way or the other, so we can discuss on it at another time. Mm-hmm. But that's a conversation. Let's put that in. Let's see. Maybe we'll put one topic that we know we can set as a topic for discussion as we go into other ones. So let's go from the contact tracing people, right? So people at current don't show up at your door. They don't knock on your door and say, "Hey, we think you're sick because you were around so and so." The other aspect is the apps that are being used in some other countries to track it. So it was supposed to be India specifically is using an app that is supposed to be voluntary used, but you can see how people in the system are turning it almost into a mandatory, which is through starvation you will comply, because a lot of the food providers are not willing to allow your business or even do business with you if you don't show them the app and it says you're healthy. So then you've got kind of a forced compliance through that. But the fun part to add to that, which is where there's a need, there's always a hacker. There's a guy who actually hacked the device and the app so that it always just reads that you're good without sharing the data or the information. And then this is in India for travel. You kind of like, I don't know if it's like a green go sign or something, or a thumbs up, but a lot of riders.
A green go?
A green go, that's what it is. Exactly.
It's a green go, yeah, you said it.
So this guy hacks it, and he goes through all the stuff of just completely reverse engineering it and setting it up so it fully functions. So if you were to really be kind of dug into by any person of apparent authority, it would look like the app is functioning as it should. But there's also just a lot of folks who I took a screenshot and that's what I show when I'm getting on the train and they don't stop me kind of aspect too. So you look at how those apps work. But let's go to where you were talking about with apps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of say where you were, say what you were thinking about how apps would be a good thing. And I don't care whether it's forced install, just tracking phones, or you kind of preface it.
Well, here's the thing. You install it, you're going through, you want to be aware, so you accept the terms and conditions and install this on your device. So if you happen to be at the same place of someone that potentially tested positive for COVID-19, and you were in the exact same area at the exact same time, because they could kind of get triangulated proximity. Let's say you were at the grocery store at like 10 a.m. Then you can go through and you'll get an alert. So I would feel comfortable with that and say, well, thanks for letting me know. I'll see if I can go and get tested because I was exposed to it, and see if I'm okay or not. See if I have to quarantine, see what I have to do.
But how does that, I was gonna say, how does that affect the system? Because you go to the store this week,
mm-hmm.
Your app goes off next week. You're like, right. Okay, I'm gonna go get tested. So then you go and get tested. Hey, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Test came back, no worries. You go back to HB the week following that. Somebody else got it. Your app goes off again. You head off to get tested again. Now we're overburdening an already weakened system by everybody going, oh, my app said I might have it, and they go and get tested.
Yeah, but at the second time, then the smarter person will say, well, maybe I'm going to start going out less and exposing myself to this.
So
it'll probably happen.
Change of behavior through.
It'll change your behavior after, I would think, after the first time.
Yeah, because maybe it hits home more that
they're just like, oh man, because when you look at it, like, oh man, well maybe I shouldn't be going out and picking up, going to the grocery store twice a day.
I've seen those statements too from folks who are closer or have lost someone to COVID, and they say if you were touched by it, you would think and act differently. And I can kind of relate to that statement. I guess I mean not relate to it, but I can understand what they're saying. Because if have you seen the grid? What is it? The active cases data. Let me see if I can bring it. Active cases data, COVID cases in the U.S. CDC. I think there was a actual tracking map that's out there for it. Yeah, COVID data tracker. So if we look at the COVID data tracker, dude, Texas is hot, man.
Mm-hmm.
Texas is very hot, between 47. But this is the range that makes Texas hot. And for what it will transfer to, also makes Florida hot. The range for a high marking color is 47,471 cases to 357,431 cases. Who came up with these gaps? 0 to 593 is a very low state, which, hey, dude, Montana's the last one rocking that color. 787 to 4,117.
Yeah.
Not this makes no. I mean, I love CDC, I love science, but that makes no sense. Why would you not just have 0 to 10,000, 10,000 to 50,000, 50,000, 200? So the gap is obviously getting a little bit bigger, but it makes logical sense for it to have it. And the reason I'm bringing up the numbers and how goofy they are is, and I'm looking for more validity on this one, was did you see the Florida researcher who created the data for Florida being told to manipulate it?
Yeah.
Basically cut that off. Did you see any more beyond that aside from it being a, hey, click on this headline kind of thing?
No.
Yeah, I didn't see it go beyond that either.
I didn't find anything more on that.
Yeah, so that led me to the whole, how does that fit?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes the data sketchy. First and foremost, I don't deny the effects of it going on and where it's happening and the loss of life. Not denying it one bit. As we know, we see folks. I mean, even through people that you know only through the screen, there is an established type of relationship that you could still feel the words they're speaking would be valid, right? So when they say that they're exposed, or so-and-so exposed, their family's exposed, you can relate to it. So it's not like this isn't some false flag thing that's being put on in a very grandiose way.
I know a lot of people are looking at it, and I know this is how I looked at it at first. I was like, oh, COVID is not going to be a big thing, and the flu is worse. But we don't know much about COVID-19 still. We know more. We know more about it. We know more about how it's transmitted and how it's not transmitted. But
yeah, it's growing education. It's still an active,
it's growing
education
thing. But it was the fact that it came on so quickly, and yeah, more people die of the flu. But the thing is, they're using the flu as one flu, and it could have, and the flu is many flus. When you get a flu shot, they're taking a gamble of what strain is coming out that year. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what the strain it's going to be for your area even.
Yeah. Well, that's the other aspect to this is if you looked at the stuff that was going on, and it's the virus at its earliest days was not clickable enough for people to report on. It wasn't clickable enough. It wasn't a good headline until the Chinese doctor, who was one of the ones whistleblowing and kind of red flagging things at the start, winds up dying.
Yeah.
Then it gets interesting. We'll get a bunch of clicks on our website from that. So now it's important. But the explosive growth of the virus just from Wuhan and China in general.
Yeah.
That stuff was nuts. That was phenomenally nuts. And if you remember, did you ever run the pandemic scenario games where you would say, if a virus started here, how fast would it spread? There's a lot of neat science data around how that stuff works, and then it comes into airline.
Because unless you do something about it, it starts growing exponentially and hitting places you wouldn't think would hit. It spread throughout our entire nation from a few ports.
Yeah, our standard incoming ports. And population density did not help that. I mean, you can obviously look at the growth and the explosive and the amount of loss of life that's going on in New York is a population density.
Yeah.
Right. More people closer, which is still one of the things that kind of blows my mind to the reopening thing. I know a lot of folks on the reopening at the government levels, not at the people level. At the people level, it's like there's situations are different from everybody. But the one thing you need to be able to do for your own sanity's sake is be able to feed yourself and feed your family and like feel secure in your own home.
Right.
Meaning, like, I mean, the benefit of even the fact that the mortgage crisis, what it wasn't as bad as it could have been because people were still able to get food and eat and do certain things. But this is climbing in on all that. And then if we look, let's say we're post-COVID, we're going to get through it. We're on the other side. Everything is great. For the past 5 months, I don't think it's been 5 months. I don't think it's been a couple that it's been allowed, but there's been eviction notice stops. Like you can't file it, or you can't execute the eviction notice. There's some other aspects to that, right? But the thing is, even if you have rent forgiveness for 4 months, well, month 5, they're not giving you another 4 months to make up that lost 4. Month 5, those renter, the landlords, etc., they want those 4 months like that.
Why, there was this one landlord, I believe it was in New York, that gave everybody 1 month free. They didn't have to pay it at all.
They just let it go.
Let it go. I think it was the whole month of April.
Yeah. There's few folks that are going to be able to do that. But he did set his tenants up for a little bit better chance of success than those who aren't.
Yeah.
But there was some really, really interesting stuff around what was happening with it. But those apps and that data and how that stuff feeds, we've run into enough. We have a very sordid history of apps, data, and trust, and the fact that the anonymity of supposed devices is a farce. The invasive nature of our own government and the Patriot Act, and how they utilize it as an excuse to suck up all of our data and store it. Right?
Right.
Everything's just being cataloged, and then basically a giant resume checker is going through everybody's conversations and going, that's a word that we don't like. Maybe we should flag it. Right? I mean, for anything else, I mean, that's what I would say. It's a glorified resume checker. Rejected, rejected, rejected. Oh, that one's one. We'll put that over. And that's exactly what we're winging through it. So in that, it's just when somebody says, oh no, our application won't track any data, barely anybody buys it. So we run into these devices, these apps, unfortunately not getting trust. I see the good side. I see the possibility of being able to help with that. And you actually touch on it on a very good point, is the study and the data and the, hey, you have a higher chance of being infected by whatever it is, behavior has changed. It's actually part of the whole studies and general health thing, is one of the things is a change of behavior that it looks at from that initial cause. So yeah, you hit on a very good point there. So do we want to break off of COVID and all things COVID for a minute?
Yeah.
Jeez. So we had a few others, but
talking about Michigan.
Want to talk about Michigan? Wow, man, you just want to go from the worst ones to the worst ones.
I do. Let's hit it.
I don't know, because we don't have some of the newer stuff around what happened with its most recent protest. But the original protest was kind of reopen Michigan. I guess we can use that. That seems to be the blanket topic for reopen insert state here group, or supporters of a movement like that. Marched on their capital in Michigan, armed. A good number of them armed. Not all, not every one of them. We only have the select, the media's select choices pictures that they could be able to use and exploit for years to come, are the pictures we saw popping up. And you have folks carrying AR-15s, or others that are just armed. Some wearing their weekend military gear. It's me. But the whole thing for that is, what were the responses you saw to that, right? You saw the photos, and then what were the responses? What did you see online to that original protest of them?
To the original protest?
Armed? Yeah, the original.
That's fine. The people that were doing it, because they were not people of color that were going in and doing this. So of course they can be, they're able to do this, but didn't they show like what was it, a Confederate flag or something like that?
That's on the more recent one.
Is that the more recent one?
That's on the more recent one. I don't recall reports of specific hate type or things that could be considered as hate symbolism on the original one. It wasn't. If it was, it wasn't what the media focused in on. I imagine they would have bit into it a little bit harder if they could.
People said people of color wouldn't have been able to protest with their firearms like they did on the state capitol.
Into what aspect? Because so where was the anger directed then? I mean, everybody's aggravated in saying that people of color wouldn't be able to do the same thing. So who are they directing their anger at? Saying, I say, obviously I'm not, but I'll try and state it from that side.
But
I'm a person of color.
Right.
I can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Because of what could happen. Because of police officers with itchy trigger fingers.
Yeah. So we look at the stuff that I was seeing. The comments were always very similar to that. Mm-hmm. In a wide variety of statements. It was exactly that. The other was you need to stop those people from doing that. Which for me, the first thing I look at is the legal aspect to what they did. And what they did is not illegal.
No.
So why would we say that we need to stop those people from doing something not illegal? It seems like we're pointing aggravations in the wrong direction. We're saying stop those people, but it's not them that's the problem in that situation, right? Is that accurate? How do we benefit by stopping another citizen from exercising their right versus making sure that we support citizens who based on way too many examples don't feel that they can exercise their own rights in that aspect with fair and equal treatment? How do we get beyond that? How do we bring ourselves to this,
to lift
not grabbing and pulling down?
Well, it all comes down to education and changing society, both of which can't happen quick.
No, there's definitely some things that have. Oddly enough, if we look at history and we look back, and this could be argued so many different ways. Because I don't know. I was about to say something that I'm thinking is inaccurate, but we're obviously at a better spot than we have been, right? At some other point in history as a marker, maybe pre-2016. Let's say it's 2015. All right, 2015, we weren't great. Still, overall, as a country, the incidents and the amount of things that are happening were still way too much. They're still way too much now. But we're better than we were, right? So in that statement, it is a long-term process to make that a drastic change across society, right? Is that where you're leaning? So it's like, the changes we make now, the stuff we do now as individuals, as groups, where's that result? I lost your audio. No, I'm just going to sit here in silence and mock you hysterically because you don't have your headphones plugged in. So maybe you can't hear me mocking you. I am mocking. Oh, okay, great. You can hear me mocking you. I guess that'll come back on me in the future then.
I got to move to my other mic because my
mic, your
battery died. Yeah.
That works. Darn, I thought I was getting free range to just...
What was I saying? Because...
I don't know. Your lips were moving.
I was on a tangent.
I was on a tangent.
We
were talking about the fact that we've, at least in history, this has come out so wrong, but we are better than we were. Would hope that we're better than we were. What is our change?
Because we're making America great again?
There are some words I thought I'd never hear come out of your mouth. That was
No.
crazy.
From when? When was America greater?
No, that's what I'm saying, right?
America's always been great. I love my country.
But it's the I don't know. It's a delicate thing
Here's
to
the
do.
thing.
But
I
that's
don't
the
have
thing.
as much issue with them practicing their rights to do what they're doing. The issue that I'm having is with some of the weapons that they're bringing there,
The
like
weapon is
AR-15.
legal.
It's legal if it's not configured to full auto.
Right.
But you can do that to an AR-15.
Oh,
which would make that
absolutely.
illegal.
It's not easy. It's not a very simple task to perform. There's actually a good bit of effort in the gunsmithing to switch a firearm over to full auto. But
It can
also
be done, though.
Yeah, it can be done. Anything can be done. You can
Yeah.
do it to a standard stock pistol. You can just trim this. You can do things to a standard handgun that will make it essentially trigger bounce itself through full auto. Anything can be made that way. The firearms that these guys had were legal. The type of firearm, right? We can get into all the nuances because we don't know if they were all licensed.
If they went in with black powdered rifles, I would have zero problem with it.
But we're not in a black powder time frame of era. We grow with the era.
They still make them.
Well, yeah, they still make them. They're fun to shoot.
Yeah.
But they didn't do anything illegal. And the thing is, and I want to change your perspective. I want to see if you can listen to your statement, because your statement was, I don't have a problem with them exercising their right. And I said it too. But in reality, the wording is very simple, that I don't have a problem with them exercising our rights as citizens. That right is your right. That right is my right, based on the individual laws with each individual of our state. You but show up at Texas with an AR-15 in the Capitol. I'm pretty dang sure even in our state, that's a little bit of a no-no.
Yeah.
But Michigan doesn't have that. Michigan doesn't have that in their documentation. I'm pretty sure that'll change next legislative session. Something will come about from that for sure. But it's
just a potential.
Stop someone else from doing something that's legal versus the argument. If we change it down to just nickels and dimes, right?
But the more guns that are out there, the more potential there is for an accident to happen, regardless if it was intended or not.
The more cars on the highway, the chance for an accident to happen, whether it was intentional or not. The chances of you walking out of your house more than once a day, there's a chance an accident can happen or not. Everything increases with volume, right? The potential for an accident, but that's going to be our argument, is that an accident might happen. The military should not train with firearms, because the fact that there's more firearms out there with those military people training with them, that an accident might happen. So don't let give the military cardboard.
But what point is there to be walking around with an AR-15 if you're not going to shoot it? There's no point in it. The only reason to have a gun is to shoot it. So why carry it around? Why carry it around in the Capitol? Just because you have your right to do it? But what's the point in that?
Comes down to personal defense. Right?
What are you defending yourself against in a state capitol?
Anything. You have to wear your mask, right? Because you're defending yourself against something. There's an argument there, but it's not going to work.
That's not going to work.
That was definitely not going to work.
You're like, no.
So I can't. It's definitely something that's difficult to argue against, right?
Because you can't go through and say every single one of those people is mentally competent enough to do what's right.
But I can't say that about everybody who goes through the DMV every day and gets a driver's license and drives a 4-ton vehicle down the highway and tries to
that's the
park
same
it in a
thing.
space that's too
But
small.
driving a car isn't a right. You have to have a driver's license.
Carrying a firearm in the state of Michigan requires you to have a license to carry said firearm. Those individuals, whether they do or not, same thing with people driving on the road. We don't know whether they have a license or not.
But
Michigan law is you are to have a license to carry that firearm.
But what is the license? What do you have to go through to get that license in Michigan?
Don't know Michigan. I know Texas, but I don't know Michigan.
What's it in Texas?
Texas is a 8-hour class in shooting proficiency exam. Personal opinion, I think it should be more stringent.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, Michigan license to carry. Let's see if we can see what's required, because it is a very.
Because if you're in a car, you could possibly live if you're in a accident, right?
You could possibly live if you take a bullet too.
If they're shooting to kill you, you're gonna die.
That implies criminal insanity, right?
What implies criminal insanity?
You're implying that one of the fact that you're saying, it sounds like you're trying to argue that the fact that there's more guns in one specific area means there's the possibility of an active shooter. That's what I got from that. Did I read that wrong?
Yeah, there's a possibility for that.
Right, but that's not
just like the more tests you do, the more positives you get.
And there it is. We circle back and we're exiting now. We've come full circle.
I proved my point.
Exit. I'm done. I went. Bye. That was really good.
So I don't trust people that aren't me with a gun.
That's fair. But imagine that same perspective from someone not you and trying to impose their will on you because they don't trust you because you're not them with a gun. And then if we go into why are they carrying their firearm, what happens to things not used? They become less relevant. They become less important. And I'm referring to the rights. I'm not referring to the firearm. Mm-hmm. They become less relevant. They become less important, and they become easier to remove. So in the aspects of them carrying their firearms, I would look at that as a way of exercising that right because it is a right they have and ensuring it is a very small step of ensuring that right is not stripped away.
But it's never going to get stripped away in America.
That's the falsified belief. We also believe that our government would never spy on us.
No, I believe our government will spy on us. Yeah, but they were doing that before then.
But it's like we wouldn't stand for it. We wouldn't let our country spy on us. But where are we now? It's like, oh, it's normal. I'm still using a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
NSA, some dude's bored watching me in the bathtub. Maybe. Don't know.
But that's where technology was going anyway. There's no way we could have stopped that.
Right.
The only way we stop it is to not have technology, and we can't do that.
Which you can definitely do. You can completely zero grid this. I bet you that's something more.
Not society as a whole. That will never happen.
Oh no, definitely not.
Mm-mm. I mean, you could do it yourself and get yourself off the grid. But even then, to what avail? That no. Even though you say you're off the grid, there's Google Maps. You can still be found.
Yeah, if you're carrying a phone, any type of, whether you have location enabled or not, the data can be gathered. So Michigan pistol application and instructions, right? Kits are provided free of charge during normal business hours from the county. A concealed application kit, a kit, apparently they provide some sort of kit. for
Oh,
your application. So
sorry.
the kit,
I thought you
well,
said something else.
okay, something
Never
not
mind.
YouTube worthy. So the pistol application kit, I'll enunciate
Kit.
better. A written information regarding the procedure
I heard
involved
something
in.
other than kits.
Well, I'm sure you did, but for now it's
I was
kits.
like, what are you reading? What story is
That's
this?
not
We
the
didn't share
website.
that.
That's not the website. What did you type into Google? A CPL application form and written information identifying the entities that offer the required CPL training if maintained by that county clerk. The application process. File the application with the county clerk, with the county you reside in, signed under oath by applicant. Oath is administered by the county clerk or his or her representative. Applicant also includes a certificate stating that the applicant has completed the required safety pistol training course, which is the certificate you get from the trainer at the end of the required course. If the applicant does not have a digitized photograph on file with the Michigan Secretary of State, include a passport quality photograph. Pay all applicable fees. There's a $100 application fee in Michigan and license fee payable to the clerk, and the county clerk will provide a receipt of payment. Pay all your fees. You get your fingerprints taken by the county clerk, state police, sheriff's office, local police agency, or other entity that provides fingerprinting services for the state. Entity providing fingerships issues a receipt. Fingerships. The entity providing fingerprinting services shall issue a receipt when the fingerprints are taken, as long as you're provided an application receipt. Contains your name, date it's issued, amount you paid, who the entity is, the coverage of your fingerprints. Then it goes to the Michigan, looks like Michigan State Police. Mm-hmm. County clerk issue a license or notice of statutory disqualification within 45 days after the date applicant has classifiable fingerprints taken. So what is the actual test itself? Michigan license to carry, we'll say class. We should be able to find about 50 or 60 different firing ranges that are bound to have one. This is the stuff that scares me. It's like you read this stuff and it's like, you can get your concealed carry online. I'm like, wait, what? Run that by me again.
Sweet.
I know. One day in-person class, CPL classes near you. There's a virtual blended learning. I'm going to try to go to one of the actual location sites and see if it tells a little bit more. And beginners, courses, welcome.
But getting back to it, when
we're
going through. So yeah, a bunch of people can do that. And the majority of them were not people of color. And people of color were saying, hey, I wouldn't have been able to do that the same without getting shot or put in jail.
Yeah. And I got to slice that down, and this is where things get dicey. So, for one, where are you located? I'm more apt to listen to someone who's like, I live in Michigan. I couldn't do that. 'Cause that's you're there. You're subject to the laws and governing of that state. Mm-hmm. If you're not within that state, it's almost like speaking out of turn. You're passing judgment on a state and people in another state operating legally under laws in that state based on your situation in your location in another state.
I wouldn't be able to do this in any state.
I have to lean into that, yeah.
Wouldn't be able to do this in San Antonio.
But why couldn't you?
Because
There's not anything legally stopping you from doing it.
No, there's not anything
You could get a
legally stopping
license
me.
to carry and
Yeah.
be within the laws of the state. And I mean, obviously, I'm asking the question sort of rhetorically, but
Like, as a person of color or a Mexican American, would have to go through, and if I were to do something, I'd have to have my phone recording it while I was doing it on live. So in case something happened to me, it would be documented right there. If I got shot, people will know from who shot me and why they shot me.
So, and let's put it into the same situation. And I mean, I know this makes me look like a complete ass and makes me look ignorant, but all I'm doing is playing a devil's advocate to the situation. But there's another angle that we're looking at. But 20 Mexican Americans, Hispanic Americans. That first prefix stuff doesn't fit for me, but Americans, period. But because what we're focusing on is the fact that it's people of color who are not able to experience the same level of equal treatment. 20 Mexican Americans with their legal AR-15s, with their licenses to carry. State of Texas allows you to carry it. I don't actually have a lot of interest in carrying an AR-15 down the street. So I haven't looked into that aspect on whether I'm going to do it, whether you could do it or not. But let's say current state, same thing. No, 20 Michiganders, 20 Hispanic people in Michigan, citizens of Michigan, U.S. citizens, have their licenses to carry. 20 of them on a protest date go to that protest and start walking up to the Capitol. Can't do it.
Legally, we should be able to, without impediment, but that's not the truth. That's not going to be what happens.
So, do we think, and this gets into hypotheticals, do we think 40 people, 20 white people, 20 Hispanic, all armed with their AR-15s, protesting and marching on that Capitol, what happens?
You still have your Hispanic people there, so it's going to be the same.
So is that implying that law enforcement in Michigan would, among a crowd of 40 people, specifically target the Hispanic population of that crowd? Is that the thought?
No, I think just for that fact, they would target the entire crowd.
Okay, I can see that.
Just for them being combined with.
So at that point, we have law enforcement reaction to the whole group, but the trigger being a law enforcement bias to unequal treatment of people of color.
Right.
Okay, I can hear that. Because I'm pretty sure, like you were saying, if you're by yourself, I don't know. I can't be sure about anything in this type of situation either way. Yeah.
I mean, you can also look at it just like, what if a bunch of bikers came armed with AR-15s, went into the Capitol? Will they be impeded? Probably.
Depend on who they're actually patched with.
Yeah.
Technically, as a riding club, and you're not considered a gang member because of your branding.
But the stigma is bad. They're seen as bad, even though I'm a motorcycle rider. I don't commit crimes.
And the vast majority of them don't.
Yeah.
It's the same population.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
But because they're wearing leather jackets or leather vests and patches, which I have a patch on my back, but it isn't like for any club or anything. It's just my own patch. It's my own Pinche Games patch.
Oh, your skull. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty good.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think.
see it. I mean, the other difficulty we run into is if you look at Michigan's population,
Mhm.
10 million people, and I believe 7.2 million are white.
And people fear what they don't know.
To what extent does that play? What do you mean?
Like,
I mean, we obviously feel, people
because
probably feel that they
people feel
can't speak for. So,
like let's say we're Colleen and I were at Graceland. When was it? Like 2 years ago, and we were walking by, and we saw some Hell's Angels there, and then she starts gripping my hand real tight. I was like, "What are you doing?" And there's well, there's Hell's Angels there. Guy was nice enough. He said, "Hi, how are you doing?" Nothing. Really nice guy, and he was the Hell's Angels.
right.
And I mean, regardless of what some members have done or what some of the members do, there are good people in in a lot of those clubs,
It's a
in the
painted
majority of
image.
those clubs. Yeah.
It's a painted image.
But the painted image is that they're rebels, that they're there to cause crime, and there to hurt people.
All right. Yeah. So that's
And
that. So to go into that, and not to lean back on the legalities of the fact of, can anybody do what was done in Michigan if you're a Michigan citizen with the right licenses and firearms legal to do so? Yes, anybody can
legally,
by law,
yes.
legally, right?
Legally,
We're not
yes.
talking. So that we answer. Would it be done? No, highly unlikely because of numerous instances of unequal treatment. Unequal treatment, the nicest way of saying things that have occurred that way, because we are on YouTube, and they'll censor you for everything they can. Mm-hmm. But what is our fix? What do individuals do as the fix, right?
I keep going back to it. Education. Education. Make humanities classes a requirement.
We need to not be doing 35 plus students in a class, though, for that, I think. Because what was your most beneficial portion of any class you took? Pick a class and tell me what the most beneficial thing of it and how you think it shaped you, like, period, going forward. So if it's the quintessential college course that you took, or even high school teacher, middle school teacher, or something to that effect, that because education isn't just K through 12 and higher ed. Mm-hmm. Education's a street experience,
right?
Place you live, stuff like that. But for our purposes in this conversation, let's just say an educational class. If this class was taught in the same way tomorrow, it might benefit, or you think it would have an impact. I mean, you said humanities.
I think humanities would be a big one that people need to see, because humanities will go through and teach you about other cultures and why, and make you understand why they do, why they are the way they are. I don't know if that came out right. Why? I
think I know why
they have the same kind? Why they have the culture that they have, and how they use their culture to promote their sense of being.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. The reason I lean on a smaller class size to do it is because a class I took had a very diverse group in it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the group I ended up with, timing wise, and the people that were in there, you would swear they went through the Rolodex and went, that one, based on some metric, right? Mm-hmm. Anglo, Hispanic, African American, exchange student. I mean, it was some serious diversity, and in the same aspect, it's a Catholic school, and virtually everyone in there was a participant or had experience in a different religion.
Right.
And the conversations, because it was a smaller conversation or a smaller pool, you were able to have conversation and challenge. And at the earliest part, they're confrontational because you don't know each other.
Right.
So they feel almost confrontational. And those who have an ability or have a better conversation skill or just more time talking, that might be
how big was that group though?
10.
There was only 10 people in the class?
Only 10 people in that
class. But here's
class.
the thing. You can get the same kind of feeling if you group people in projects in that class. So you could do 30 and yet still rotate those groups to where you get exposed to everybody in that class.
Yeah.
And have the same kind of effect.
Then we run into the conversation we had in regards to the U.S. as a whole, and then the major metropolitan areas that are still essentially segregated in a way by old lines, very old lines. The population hasn't migrated as much in certain areas. And so then at that point, your sphere of influence, the diversity, the different amount of people that you might have in your group would be almost indifferent or the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to...
It really is what you're exposed to. What you're exposed to. Like I said, humanity is a big thing. A second one is art appreciation. That's a second big thing, because you see culture through art.
Yeah.
And then it makes you appreciate it so much that I never thought when I was a 8-year-old Chicano on the south side of San Antonio that I was ever going to get to go to Paris to see the Mona Lisa.
Right.
And that's something I got to do. But it was because I was exposed to this art and these humanities. And my mother exposed me to art at a very, very young age. So I was big into Egyptology back in the day. So I was big into King Tut and Ramses, and just to be able to see that, I still want to go to Egypt. Not right now, but I still want to go to Egypt to see the pyramids. That would be the coolest thing.
So and hopefully we would say that the education system kind of fills in where the gap is a little weak for that aspect, but the parental influence
that was a big
and
that
the
was
exposure of those elements to have you to generate it. But what I would say is a curiosity that then yields a drive to see more of that. I think the benefit on my side was that I'm an Air Force brat. That's how I wound up here.
Yeah.
But I was very little when we were out of country, so no memory of that. We were Washington, D.C., and then mostly around Texas and New Mexico for all of that. But the fact is, you have that travel, so there was some exposure in that aspect. But that's where this shows the value for me, is because I still like. I've definitely, I think better now, but it wasn't as a strong desire to expand and learn and have difficult conversations until I went to school. Still very small-minded for the law. And that's the thing. If we think about it, we watch the internet nowadays and somebody says one thing 10 years ago and they get dragged back over the coals again now for it. It's been 10 years. The dude's never made another mistake like that again, but we bring it back up. When we know for a fact people change. Better or worse, people change over age.
Yeah.
And the internet is horrible in the fact that it will bring up the oldest bones. And because of how big a population it reaches, everybody who saw the bones already and doesn't care about them goes about their business. but there's still 10,000 more new ones that just saw it for the first time. And
Let
it's
me
like
care
it's
about it
day
for
one
you.
again. Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
I heard
Day one stuff.
somebody's doing a big thing over Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder for him playing in blackface.
Right. Right. Did you watch the Joe Rogan show on that one? Watch that one. It's a great. Robert Downey Jr. says it very matter of factly. He's like, society is too. I don't think he says weak, but he says you couldn't make that film today because of that. And the thing is like if you, I've never watched that film.
I don't think you could have. I think it was there when they made it, but the thing,
Oh,
if
it definitely
you
was.
actually see I think it would have been said that it couldn't have been done then, but how it was done as a joke, not necessarily a joke on blackface, but a joke
Irony.
on the character himself, of the actor character himself, not Robert Downey Jr., but him playing an actor.
Yeah, and I've never seen the film, so my understanding of it is that character is specifically done in irony. Totally. But regardless of my thoughts,
I mean, tons of people did
item,
not take offense to that at that then.
Yeah. Same balance now. A lot of people still don't take offense to it.
Yeah.
Regardless of your.
I mean, even when we were exposed to stuff like Bugs Bunny back in the day, that stuff was.
Oh yeah, there's some sketchy cartoons back in that time frame, and those things, holy cow! And the thing you have to think about it, in the '80s, we were watching cartoons still made in the '50s. Half the things that were most of our Bugs cartoons were done in the '50s.
Yeah.
So that old aspect is still there and permeated in that media. So that was a little nuts. And the Tropic Thunder thing, that if you get a chance, look up French cosplay contestant disqualified. And it's an interesting twist on the blackface issue. Because she made, so there's a character in one of the games, I can't remember it, and she likes this character, right? She's infatuated with this character, wants to be this character, so she builds an entire bodysuit of that character. That character is a person of color. She is a white French person. And people complained enough that although she won first prize at the French cosplay contest, the Worlds told her she had to change costume, and she's like, forget it then, I'm not coming. This is the costume I made. It has nothing connected to what you're referring it to. I am the creator of this costume, and it is done for this reason. But them as an entity were choosing to listen to outside voices and say, oh, well, they're the ones who are saying this, so we're going to tell you, no, change your costume.
Yeah.
But it's a full-on bodysuit.
Yeah, I think as a society, we've become too sensitive to things.
Yeah. We are definitely sensitive.
Very, very sensitive.
Even and
when
putting
it comes
that subject,
to, like,
before we go much further, taking that subject and sensitivity to it and removing it from this conversation. We're talking about in general sensitivity to things, because we're not saying that we're too sensitive on that subject. That there are some very valid arguments made in that subject. So, but go ahead. So overall, sensitive in general.
Yeah, just sensitive in general. Even like if you like tell a joke to somebody, not even an off-color joke. If you joke too much with somebody, it's like too much. People can't take what they were able to take back in our day.
Yeah, there's a different thing there.
Things are called bullying very early. A lot earlier than they should be.
Yeah. Well, and we live in a totally different world.
We
Because
do.
I remember being a kid, and you and I could just totally throw down at the schoolyard, which, in oddly enough, pretty much every person I ever threw dukes with as a kid was my, like, for lack of anything else, was my ride or die from that time forward. We were solid all the way into my high school years. I fought it out with a guy at this school, and then him and I were cool forever. Years after that, we were cool. Nowadays, it's the kids can't do that.
Yeah.
But even if they do, there's a distance that they go really weirdly in some of it. I'm not saying it's okay or it's different, but I think it's just a different time. At a point where a cop would pull us over and be like, look, I ain't messing with you. Get your butts off the street. It's late, whatever. Now it'll be like, well, your kid was arrested for being out past midnight and he's only 15. Versus them being like, hey, where are you going? Well, I'm on my way home. I live right down the block here. It's like, all right, I'm going to pass through here in a little bit. You better not be here. That wouldn't happen. That stuff doesn't happen. We have a very different changing world. And I think the hardest part is we look at, and this is going to sound so much old fartish, but it's always the older generation talking about the younger generation. And everybody always thinks about how the younger generation is supposed to adapt to the world. But in reality, it's the older generation that has to find a way to adapt to the changing of the growing world.
There's got to come a point to where it's too much, though.
And that's where we should have the continuing of specific rights. Certain things need to be kept in place to that. And like we said, you have the right to do certain things, but that doesn't mean you have the right to not feel the consequences of those things. But still, some things for me play both ways, which they really don't in society today. A person who is not of popular narrative, right? They're just not liked for some reason, whatever it is, their views, their perspective, or whatever. But they're not doing anything illegal or anything criminal. A person milkshakes them or sucker punches them from the side. How is that acceptable?
Yeah.
The person doing that has just committed a crime. And they should feel full ramifications of that, regardless of your lack of love or distaste for the person or their views or whatever.
Right.
That still don't fly. So there's a lot of stuff that still plays into society. I don't know. We got so much to change and grow, but we got to look at some topics for our next one and something we can bring back. I don't know. I think we had pretty good things tonight. We definitely took the train on its own rails and off and back and off, which is still fine, perfectly enjoyable on my aspect. We have, I think we should come to the Aunt Becky, Lori Loughlin, and the fact that they took they're going to enter a guilty plea, and then it does play into the absolute unequal treatment in the courts, because we still have the story of Tanya McDowell, who very simply used a different address to get her son into another school, which we do that nowadays all the time. To get to a better school, you may be on a different address. And she ends up with 4 years. And Lori Loughlin's, because they've got a fat checkbook, is what it appears, she's going to do 2 months, $150,000 in fines, 250 hours in community service. How does that, for a more affluent just being monetary, in any way translate to someone who is not so affluent getting 4 years in prison? Those two do not line up. So that's one of those decisions. The other thing is the boycott FedEx. We're going to look at the boycott FedEx because that story needs to expand a little bit, but we've seen two different instances. We've seen one FedEx driver who through his choice was like, forget it, I'm just going to stay in my truck. And then we have another situation where one of the drivers minced words. No physical altercation, but they didn't mince words. So we'll look at those two. And then there is the story of the nurse who exhibited his transformation, essentially, from being in COVID recovery for a total of 6 weeks. I think we should look at that. I think that if we feel we can share the picture, or if we need to maybe reach out for a resource or not, we just make guide for a resource. But it's disturbing. Very good health man, and his entire physique changes. He's apparently clear of COVID, but his physique change is massive. And I think that gets us started on next week, and then we'll see what kind of shenanigans the world throws at us for next week.
Very
And we'll see
cool.
what we bring in.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. These are our opinions on the topics at hand, using our knowledge of what we've gathered with extensive research, which may have taken up an entire half hour. If you would like to carry on the conversation, feel free to post in the comments below and keep it civil. Support it with facts or face the ban hammer. So, yeah.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon. I'm Pinche.
I'm the Gringo.
Peace out.
Have a good week.
And we're out.